Appointment of Mr. Nicholas A. Majett to be the Chief Administrative Officer for Prince George's County. Currently, Mr. Majett serves as the Acting Chief Administrative Officer. As the Acting Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Majett oversees the day-to-day operation of the county government. He has over 25 years of experience in public administration and management with expertise in consumer and regulatory affairs, oversight, budget planning, and implementation, contract review, tax policy, and litigation. Prior to joining the county government, Mr. Majett served as the director of the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs for the District of Columbia. Mr. Majett received his Bachelor of Science degree in Political Science from Howard University and the Juris Doctorate from Howard University School of Law. The nominee gave a presentation to the members of the Public Safety and Fiscal Management Committee on his qualifications, experience, and ability to implement the county executive's initiatives on behalf of the citizens and residents of Prince George's County. The members of the Public Safety and Fiscal Management Committee had an in-depth discussion with the nominee on issues concerning his role and future as the Chief Administrative Officer and ways to enhance the economic development in the county and address consumer regulatory affairs. The members of the Public Safety and Fiscal Management Committee voted favorable 4-0, with Council Members Tolles, Harrison, Lehman, and Turner present, to recommend the appointments of Mr. Majett as the Chief Administrative Officer of Prince George's County. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll now turn to the introduction of the nominee. We're pleased to have with us our County Executive, Rashawn L. Baker III. If you can take the podium. We're pleased to recognize Mayor Vince Gray from the District of Columbia. Thank you for being here, sir. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure when you show us the hospitality when we're in the districts, and we're great to return that hospitality. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the council. It is indeed a great day in Prince George's County, and I'm pleased to be here with you. It is my pleasure to stand before you to support the nomination of Nicholas Majett to be the new Chief Administrative Officer for the county. Mr. Majett stands ready and willing and able to take on this important task of helping my administration build upon the foundation that we've built in cooperation with the council over the last 3.5 years. When I began to search for a new CAO, I sought out a person who possessed the necessary skills, experience, and expertise that would enhance the operation of this government and continue to move us forward. We identified a number of people that we talked about for this job, but the person I knew who best suited the role was Nicholas Majett. As has been stated, Nick is a lawyer. Nick and I met over 30 years ago when we were law students at Howard University. Nick was a third-year student, and I was a second-year student. Nick was the teaching assistant to the late Luke Moore, who taught trial advocacy. Those of you know Luke Moore is a giant in the legal profession, especially around civil rights. And I was a student in that class. But in addition to that, what Nick did was he tutored a number of students in tax law, which wasn't my strong suit. So since I was doing very badly in tax law, I attended Nick's tutorial, and I actually managed to pass. And that started our friendship. We also worked together as lawyers. When I went out and opened my practice as a first-year lawyer, I had my first trial, and I was very nervous. And as I say many times as I stand before you, usually my best advice comes from my wife. And she suggested I call Nick Majett. And believe it or not, he was nice enough to walk me through, I don't know if he remembers this, to my very first jury trial. So if you've ever done a jury trial and you're young and you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how to call witnesses or introduce. So there was Nick walking me through the first jury trial I had, and I actually won, which I think was a surprise to my client and me. So when I needed somebody who knows government, who gets things done, and who I trust, I knew Nick Majett was that person. You see, Nick gets things done. He's very thoughtful and systematic. I'm sure you've heard or seen or read some of the work that he's done over the years in the District of Columbia government. He clearly brings a long history of government experience and public service experience. Experience more than qualifies him to be the Chief Administrative Officer for this government. Nick's experience as a government lawyer, as an agency head in District of Columbia qualifies him to help us continue the quest to make Prince George's County the greatest place to live, invest, work, and visit. So whether he is working with our Office of Law or discussing permits, inspection, and DPI, footnote, when we decided to create the new agency, the first place we went, thanks to the mayor who allowed us to come and look at what they were doing differently in D.C. It just so happened we went to Nick Majett's office at Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. So the ideas that Director Hytham and Carla Reed got was from what they were doing in the district. And so they got a chance to meet and know Nick. His experience, the trust, is going to make him a really, really great Chief County Administrative Officer. But the thing that I would like to close in putting his name forward was, I've been blessed, and this county has been blessed, with two of the finest Chief Administrative Officers, I think. We started with Mike Errico, who had over 40 years of government experience. And then we had Brad Seaman, who came in with no government experience, but really helped us get the ball rolling. And so when it was time for me to pick a new administrative officer, I didn't want my friendship and relationship with Nick to skew my decision as to what would be in the best interest of the county. Because it's not whether, in fact, we're friends, we'll remain friends. It's about moving the county forward. So I asked two people who I knew would have, who had no interest other than the county, what they thought about Nick. And I didn't tell them that actually, and they didn't tell Nick that he was interviewing for this job. I simply wanted them to meet him, question him, and, take his pulse. And then come back and tell me, am I truly making the best decision? Every person that I met with, independent, came back and said, of the people we've talked to, this is the guy you ought to go with. That cinched it for me. I don't think we could have a greater, although we're going to have one come up in a few minutes, testimony to the experience and what Nick will bring to this county and working with you. As I told him when we put him in the acting position, we have some great council members. It has been a pleasure over this last 3 and almost 4 years to see the movement of this county. What we now need is somebody that helps us. We're at the starting line. We're not at the finishing. We're at the starting line. So we need someone who will come in and help us move it forward. I think Nick is that person. That is why it is my pleasure and my honor to put his name forward as the Chief Administrative Officer for Prince George's County. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Comments from the nominee, Mr. Majett.
Good morning, Chairman Franklin.
Good morning.
Vice Chairman Campos and council members.
If you could pull a little closer
Sure.
to you, appreciate it. Thank you.
First, I'd like to acknowledge the Mayor, Vincent Gray, for being here. I know he has a really hectic schedule, and I really am honored that he's here. I'd also like to acknowledge my family. My mom's here. And so you see where I get my good genes from. And then I have a brother, a sister, 2 brothers, a sister, nieces, nephews, family members, and all of that. They're all here, so I really appreciate them coming. I'm here before you today as the county executive's appointee to the position of Chief Administrative Officer for Prince George's County. And first, let me thank County Executive Baker for appointing me as his Chief Administrative Officer. I'm honored to be considered for this important role in the administration and to assist him in leading our county government. Since the inception of the Baker administration, the county executive and his team have made incredible progress and significant improvements throughout the county and in the county government. is my goal to continue with the positive trend and momentum. And as you know, because I've met with each of you individually with the exception of Councilmember Tolles because of our conflicting schedules, I am a county resident. I've been a county resident for 21 years. And of course, I had to relocate in the district when I was appointed as director of the Department of Consumer Regulatory Affairs by Mayor Gray. So I have reestablished my county residence, and I am a bona fide taxpayer paying Prince George's County resident. So I've seen Prince George's County grow from the 21 years that I've been here. And I always knew it had potential, which is why I moved from the district to Prince George's County. And I'm amazed at the progress that you all have made so far. To me, Prince George's County is a gem and sort of a diamond in the rough. And we just need to dust off that dust and let the diamond show, because we have so much potential. And I'm so honored to be a part of the Baker administration as we move this county forward. I look forward to overseeing the day-to-day operation of the county government, as well as provide the oversight for the planning and implementation for the county executives' top initiatives and program. Now, I was appointed on May 5th. My last official day with the District of Columbia government was May 3rd, which was a Saturday. On May 2nd, we had a building collapse in the District of Columbia. So as the agency head of Department of Consumer Regulatory Affairs, I had to oversee that collapse. And returned to the scene on Saturday just to make sure everything was going okay. On Sunday, the only day I had to rest between leaving the District of Columbia government and coming to Prince George's County was that Sunday. And I got a call from one of the deputy chief administrative officers who said, "We need your help. We have a slope failure in Fort Washington." Well, I'd never heard of a slope failure before. I'd heard of mudslides and so forth, and learned that a mudslide, of course, a slope failure, of course, is a prelude to a mudslide. So, not being nervous at all, because I've actually not included on my resume was a brief stint as the attorney for the general counsel for the district's Homeland Security. So for a couple of years, I served as their general counsel. So I was part of many training exercises. The district has over 200 special events each year, and the Emergency Management Agency or Homeland Security oversees those events. So for several years in that capacity, I've overseen a lot of special events, catastrophes, training exercises, and so forth. So that wasn't new to me at all. So I immediately said, well, let's get a conference call scheduled. And they said, we've already done that. I said, okay, let's get the emergency command bus to the site. We've already done that. So I said, well, what do you need me for? So they said, well, we just want you to know that we don't need you. We're just advising you. So I said, already then. So the next day, of course, we were in full gear and visited the site, and we got the tenants, actually the residents that needed assistance they needed. We called in a contractor to look at the site and determine exactly what happened and what was the prognosis and so forth. And then, of course, we had to get I was engaged with the police chief, the fire chief, and the deputy CEOs. So I really hit the ground running and really got a flavor for the competency of this government. And it's by far just as comparable to the District of Columbia, whom we share a border with. We have a memorandum of understanding regarding the border and with respect to the police. Two police chiefs, Chief McGaw and the district's police chief, Kathy Lanier. So we work together in that regard. Our Homeland Security Office works closely with D.C. Homeland Security Office. So we have a lot of commonalities, and both jurisdictions are by far two of the best jurisdictions in the country. So I look forward to continuing that relationship with my administration or my staff. You know my education, you know my experiences, we've met. I'm not going to belabor you with repeating that. So, that said, again, I am so honored to be here. I mean, I know so far this has been the best position I've had in my life. And you know what they say about a job you love? If you love your job, you never work a day in your life. So far, I've never worked a day in my life. And this is only, you know, Mayor Gray appointed me as director, and that was an awesome job, really an awesome job. And I served in that capacity under him, his great leadership, and also have 29 years of experience with the District of Columbia government and 1 year of service with the federal government's Department of Commerce. So I am ready, willing, and able to take this position. I've been doing it for 2 months. I hope that you like what you see. I can tell you there are more, and if there's an indicator of success, the indicators are what a person has done in the past. I hope that you think that my past qualifies me for this position. And I look forward to working with you, and I look forward to your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll turn to our speakers list, and we're honored to have the mayor of what we hope to one day be our neighboring state, the District of Columbia, Mayor Vincent Gray. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to you, and good morning to the other members of the council, a number of whom I've had the opportunity to work with on a number of occasions. So thank you all very much for having me. In our council, we get to sit down at the table. I like this better because if it doesn't go well, you can make a quick run right out the door. I'm delighted to be here to speak on behalf of testifying in full support of the nomination of Nick Majett to be the Chief Administrative Officer for the outstanding county of Prince George's. We know that we are losing an immensely talented leader in the District of Columbia, but I think we all know that in politics there's always a quid pro quo. In this one, you all get Nick, and what we would like to have is our football team back.
Why don't we call Nick a gift, so we don't have to worry about it?
I can tell by the response that it ain't going to happen, right, guys? We now have a population of 646,000 people who live. Not happening, huh, Karen? We now have a population of 646,000 people who live in the District of Columbia. We are growing at a rate of about 1,000 to 1,200 people a month. It wasn't that long ago that we were hovering around 500,000 people, and we are growing every day. And frankly, it is really wonderful to be able to have someone like Nick Majett to be able to provide leadership. He worked as a leader in our city for almost 30 years. He came to the district government in 1985, working at what then was the Corporation Counsel Office, and now is the Office of the Attorney General. When I became the mayor in 2011, I was proud to be able to ask Nick and then to appoint Nick to serve as the director of the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs, which is not only a critically important department for us in the District of Columbia. Frankly, it was one that had had a lot of challenges and a lot of difficulty. And you know, you work with a person like Nick, and he takes what seems like the most difficult tasks and turns them into just a piece of cake. And that's exactly what he did. He not only has a tremendous command, had a tremendous command of what went on in DCRA, but if you go into that agency and spend some time with him and with the people there, they absolutely love Nick. They respect him. They have such a great respect for him that he was a natural to be able to lead excuse me, the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. The mission of DCRA is to protect the health, safety, economic interests, and quality of life of residents and businesses and visitors to the District of Columbia. And when you think about it, that just about sums up everything, doesn't it? Yeah. And that's why it's so difficult to be able to run the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. He was responsible for issuing business licenses, building permits, conducting inspections, enforcing building, housing, and safety codes, and then even in latter days to be able to run out and prop a building back up if it falls down in the District of Columbia, and he was good at that also. There is no question that Nick was responsible for moving the agency down the road tremendously, and I know he will do exactly the same thing working with County Executive Baker, who, by the way, you know, while I may be joking, he is a good friend of mine, and I love working with Rushern Baker. What a great partnership it is between the District of Columbia and Prince George's County, and so much of it is attributable to the great spirit and talent that County Executive Baker brings. And I think all of you all know there, and those who are behind me, I'm sure know that when people can work effectively, well together, so much can get done. And I'm deeply appreciative for the opportunity to have been able to work with County Executive Baker over the last 4 years. You know, during Nick's tenure with us, he was able to bring together ways of engaging in customer service that simply hadn't existed before, and had helped to be able to make more comprehensible the regulatory scheme and regulatory framework in the District of Columbia. He led our efforts to simplify our processes and requirements, eliminate redundancies across the agency, eliminate inefficiencies, and all the while making services so much more efficient for the people in the District of Columbia. You know, one of the things that I had wanted to do when I became the mayor was to really look at business regulatory reform in the District of Columbia. And that is a monumental task, and one that you could easily duck and come back and say, we just didn't get to that one. But, you know, 15 years from now, we'll get to it. Well, in Nick, I knew we had the kind of person who could lead that effort and make it work. And so I asked Nick, in addition to being the director of the Department of DCRA, to take on the responsibility of co-chairing with someone in the private sector the business regulatory reform task, and what a sterling job he did. In fact, even after he had left, he came back and spent a couple of hours with us reviewing some of the proposals that we are now moving to implement in the District of Columbia. One of those is the One City Business Portal, which for the first time in the District of Columbia, a person can go and apply for up to 8 different approvals in 8 different agencies, and you can do it through one portal. And I want to thank Nick again for having led the effort to bring us to a point where we have significantly streamlined those processes, and that will be something that's in place for many years to come in the District of Columbia. And so, again, I'm proud to come out here today and to be with you all, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you all, and with County Executive Baker, and with soon-to-be Chief Administrative Officer Majett in place. I can only envision a continuing building of the relationships and the spirit between the District of Columbia and Prince George's County. So thank you all very much for having me today. This was, you know, not everything that we do in these jobs is something that you look forward to. I looked forward to coming out here today to be able to speak on behalf of Nick Majett to the County Council. Thank you all very much for what you do, and thank you for supporting Nick Majett.
Thank you. Thank you. Mayor Gray, we truly appreciate it, and the feeling's mutual. Thank you, sir. We really appreciate it. Madam Clerk, are there any additional speakers?
No additional speakers, sir.
Seeing no further speakers, this public hearing has been held. Is there a motion to confirm? It's been moved by Ms. Harrison, seconded by Mr. Davis. Turning now to discussion, I'll turn to Ms. Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Mr. Majett, I would just like to say that I'm so impressed by your smarts and your commitment to good government, and your breadth of experience in public service. I know will benefit Prince George's County greatly. And on a personal note, I want to thank you for your attendance at a series of meetings including a very contentious one yesterday about a thorny permitting problem in my district that involves county and state regulators. You've been a huge help, and I so appreciate that, and I look forward to working with you. And I have to say, Mr. Mayor, I think your loss is clearly our gain. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Tolles.
I want to get on Mr. Majett for calling me out like that. I got you through committee, right? You were good to go, but I do want to thank you for your commitment and dedication that you exhibited as soon as you came to the council, or to the county rather. I think I had an issue probably in your first week, maybe your first day, with something we were working on that was in a Transforming Neighborhood initiative, and you stepped right in and you took care of it. And even when we were in committee, we had in-depth discussion about the permitting process and where we want to go. Stand up, I can't see you. I don't thank you, no. I just wanted to thank you. I'm teasing him, but I just want to thank you for your you can have a seat. I just really want to thank you for your cancer. You want to hear?
I want to hear an answer.
No, but when we were in committee, we did have a good discussion about you coming on board and what we look forward to you contributing to the county, and I think that we were all excited in PSFN when you were there, and so I know we're going to do great things together. And you got me in trouble with Mr. Baker. He looked at me and said, "You didn't meet with my guy." No. But I know I texted you and said I got him through. But I think we're excited. My good friend, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for being here. You brought out the big wheel people, big dogs to come out for you. So again, we thank you, and we look forward to the great work and great partnership. And no, you cannot have the Washington Redskins back. Okay, thank you so much. But you have a great stadium and nationals, so thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to say, Mr. Majett, you've been hands-on in your 2 months here, and I expect and assume and predict that will continue. Really appreciate the breadth of experience that you bring. Mayor Gray, thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure. And Mr. County Executive, good choice, good work. Keep it up. Keep working together. We have a lot of work to do. And I look forward to supporting Mr. Majett. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Majett. From the first time that we met, our very first meeting, I was impressed with just our dialogue and, I don't know, call it the women's intuition, but the commitment that I felt from you for a good government, as Ms. Lehman said, was unspeakable. I do look forward to working with you, and I thank you for who you are and for what you do and for your commitment to service, because that's what we're all called to do. Mr. Mayor, the next time you talk about trying to take the Redskins from my district, you're going to get a tech and you're going to get a timeout, you're going to get thrown out or whatever the call is. I think I gave the wrong call. I think I gave you a basketball call or whatever, but it's a tech and you're going to get thrown out, a flag, and you're going to have to run. But I thank you, and also I just wanted to mention also, Mr. Majett, thank you for making sure that you are working with us in the Council of Governments. Ms. Tolles and I are there, and we appreciate you being there on behalf of the county executive. It's very important. We're all term limited, and the other jurisdictions that are there, none of them are term limited. So they are there, and their voices at the table consistently, some of them for as much as 20 years. And so when people in Prince George's County talk about how come Fairfax gets this, and how come Montgomery County gets this all the time, partly is because they're there and they have a voice at the table, and they can voice what they want over and over and over again, and they're able to get what they want. Because of their continuity. And so at least having a few of us at the table strong so that we can fight together is very helpful. So we appreciate you being there from day one.
Thank you. I think that was a timeout, first down. I think you threw a flag. I'm not sure all what was going on. Okay, all right.
All of the calls
was just wrong.
Okay, all right.
I throw them all together.
All right, all right. But I do want to echo what was said, Ms. Majett. We've had a good time down in Mr. Patterson's district looking at the Piscataway Road, Piscataway Drive issue actually, and you jumped feet first, into that issue. It's a challenging one, but you don't let that stop you, and we really appreciate all of your help and support with that issue. And we look forward to years and years of working together and bringing the world to Prince George's County. All right? I'm going to turn to Mr. Davis.
And Mr. Franklin, Chair Franklin actually articulated the final point I thought that needed to be enunciated, and we'll put a exclamation point on the regionalism that's involved here with the District of Columbia and Prince George's County beginning to work more closely together, looking at growth and economic development, growth in population, and the things that actually turn people to understand that the world is coming to Prince George's County in this region. So Mayor Gray, roll up your sleeves, continue to roll up your sleeves, and thank you for allowing such a great person to come. I know you probably tried like heck to keep him, but we tried like heck to bring him. So welcome aboard, and I'm looking forward to the future.
Sorry, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I vote enthusiastic aye.
Mr. Campos. Aye. Mr. Davis. Aye. Ms. Harrison.
How about I?
Ms. Lehman.
Vote aye.
Mr. Olson.
Aye.
Mr. Patterson.
Aye.
Ms. Tolles.
I vote aye.
Ms. Turner.
I vote aye.
Absolutely great choice. Thank you. Motion carries 9-0.
Congratulations.
I'd like to do this. This is a special occasion for all of us, but it's not often that I get to have the mayor of the District of Columbia in here for testifying for one of our nominees, and it is such a great personal pleasure for me. I know Nick is the reason that he came out, but he's been a great partner of mine. I don't know if we could have gotten back past these 3.5 years without us working together. And publicly, I'd like to thank him on behalf of my family. There's probably a little known fact. Very few people probably know this. But from the very beginning, we developed a relationship. But it went beyond just the mayor and myself. A number of times, at least once a month, especially during the early stages when my wife was getting sicker, the mayor and I and my wife would have lunch or dinner in a quiet place in National Harbor or some other place. But no matter what the occasion, no matter what was going on, no matter what situation, we never canceled that. It was just friends. It wasn't about business. And when you're going through these types of jobs and the stress and challenges, it's nice to be able to sit down with somebody who understands and just be yourself. And so it's such a privilege to have him here. I think it's befitting that we have you come say a few words about Nicholas before we swear him in. The Mayor of the District of Columbia, Vincent C. Gray.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to say a few words about Rashawn Baker first, because, well, it is fitting, because I think he's done an absolutely extraordinary job of leading Prince George's County. I love coming out here. When Nick asked me if I would come and testify, I said, absolutely, I'd be glad to. Not just because of Nick, but because of the people out here, the people, this county. I love coming out here, and that's the absolute honest truth. I see my dear friend Betty Hager Francis, who's in the back. Betty and I worked together in the Sharon Pratt Kelly administration. Now that's been a while. And by the way, for those who don't know, Betty was one of the, if not the best, Department of Public Works director we've ever had in the District of Columbia. and I know she's done an extraordinary job out here. I do want to say this, County Executive, that I saw some of our employees from the district government downstairs while I was testifying, and I've sent a couple of my staff out to make sure they get on the bus and get back to the District of Columbia, because I know they're ripe to be recruited otherwise. I think, absolutely, seriously, I think that you all have made such an extraordinary choice, and I want to congratulate you again, County Executive Baker, for selecting Nick Majett. What you will see over time is that Nick, you will think that there are 3 or 4 of him, because he is everywhere. As a department head, there were so many things that we would have going on, and there was Nick. Nick was right there. And he always does it with such class, with such skill, with such tact, and with seeming, having absolutely no concerns about getting stuff done. That is the kind of quality that you want to have in somebody who is in a job like this, because it is constant motion, it is constant activity. In fact, you get to a point when there's nothing going on, you go like, hey, something's wrong here, there's nothing going on. And Nick is absolutely unflappable. That is the best way I can describe him. And again, you've made a great choice. I'm proud to be able to be here to support him today, and will do everything I can, as we move ahead, to be able to support you, sir, and to support your team as I know, will continue to do things together here in Prince George's County with the District of Columbia. I know you all have thought about our cranes that we have, but no, they're not available to be moved. But in all seriousness, we are really happy with the way the District of Columbia has developed, and we will all be a stronger region as we develop together. And with this man at the helm and the folks working with you, County Executive Baker, there is no question, there's absolutely no limit to what can be achieved by Prince George's County and the District of Columbia working together. So thank you again for having me today, and I appreciate it so much.
I bring to you, without further ado, because we do have a great lunch, we want to make sure people eat, our new Chief Administrative Officer and a great friend of mine and my family, Nicholas Majett.
I thought I already spoke. I got to speak again. I'm going to be quick because I know Mom is hungry. And I'm the only thing between you and this fabulous meal they have prepared. But let me just say first that I'm so honored. I really am honored to have been nominated and then confirmed by Mr. Baker. And equally as honored to have worked for Mayor Gray. And I sort of knew Mayor Gray vicariously when he was the director of ARC. It was a facility for developmentally disabled individuals. And my first job out of college, out of Howard University, was at Forest Haven, which was the district's facility for developmentally disabled individuals. And there were about 1,100 residents at the facility, which is located in Laurel. Some of the residents were bused to various programs in the city, and one of which was ARC. Everybody knew Vincent Gray's name because he would always call and demand the best for the residents. And I kept hearing this name, Vincent Gray. You better make sure you have everything in order, otherwise you're going to get a call from Mr. Gray. So I was impressed. Some people took it, offensively, who is he to be calling here? But he cared about those who could not fend for themselves. And that really struck a nerve with me. So then when I met him, I said, wow, that's Vincent Gray. Heard the name for a long time, and then I finally got to meet him when he was the director of the Department of Human Services, which was at the time the largest agency in the District of Columbia with, I think, over 1,000 employees, the largest budget. And I was impressed then that he was able to do an excellent job in managing the largest agency in the District of Columbia and the agency that dealt with human services, which is what he was all about. So when he asked me to be the director of the Consumer Regulatory Affairs, I was really, really honored. And, a lot that I learned was from him. I attended a lot of events with him. I learned to address people, to deal with emergencies. So a lot of what I learned was from Vincent Gray, not just as the director of the agency, but as an employee of Forest Haven, where he demanded the best for those who were less fortunate than us. So I was also honored when, and I know how busy his schedule is, because when I was the director, I'd get a copy of his schedule. We all got the directors got copies, and I don't know how he did it, but he'd do 5, 6 events a day, and you know, after I did one, that was enough. But he would do 5 or 6. So, and he still has that energy, and he's a statesman. He's a true statesman. And as a native Washingtonian, I know that he was one of his legacy will be that he was one of the best mayors that the district has ever had. And of course, County Executive Baker, I met in law school, and as he mentioned, I tutored him. But one thing about Baker, everybody loved, Will was Resherm then. I'm going to say Resherm for a minute. But, I mean, everybody loved Resherm Baker. He was very concerned. He was a good student. He wanted to make sure he got, you know, the best possible grade, which is one of the reasons he was part of the group that I tutored, because he wanted to make sure he did well. And he did do well. And he's done well ever since. He's a true statesman, just like Mayor Gray. So it's very fitting that two of my favorite people I admire the most, are sitting here at my confirmation. And of course, my mom. My mom is. Yeah. And I always say my mom is from Petersburg, West Virginia, where I spent a few summers, and best years of my life. You know, we used to swim in the lakes, and we used to fish in the lakes and so forth. And the miracle to me was taking a watermelon seed and putting it in the ground, and it grew. That was just the most miraculous thing to me. You know, as a kid, it was like, wow, this is just, how did that happen? So coming to work each day reminds me of Petersburg, which I think the slogan is "Wild and Wonderful," which is their slogan. And when I come to work, I'm reminded of that because of there's some farmland in Prince George's County. There's these fantastic large houses in Prince George's County, the trees, the flowers. So it's really kind of reminds me of my upbringing. So I'm fortunate to now be working here. You know, this is so far one of the best jobs I've ever had. It's an awesome job. Really is an awesome job to be managing this great county.